What's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie. You're watching New Light Pets. Today we are going to do a very requested video and talk all about blue tongue skinks. So we're just going to go over their basic care requirements, and I should probably introduce you to this beautiful girl here. This is Ozzy, my northern blue tongue skink. I rescued her about 1.5 years ago. She was extremely scared of humans and had a really rough life prior to becoming my pet, but she has come a really long way, and I just think these guys are amazing pet lizards to have. So I'm gonna put Ozzy down and let her explore the floor because she doesn't really like to be handled all that much, but I'll be sure to share some really cute clips of her. So what exactly is a blue tongue skink? Well, they are medium-sized lizards that are generally found in either Australia or Indonesia. And depending on what species you have, that can vary their care requirements a little bit. However, it is pretty similar. The main differences are really going to be in humidity and a little bit of temperature as well. So this will be just a basic care guide. There's Ozzy. But just make sure, depending on what type of species of skink you go with, that you really dive deep into your research of that specific type of skink. Ozzy, who's back there, is a northern blue tongue skink, as I mentioned before, so she is one of the Australian species. Blue tongue skinks are omnivorous, meaning that they eat both plant and animal matter. Their diets are really interesting because they are scavengers in nature, so they can eat close to just about anything, and they're often considered to be kind of garbage disposals. But they are great eaters, which definitely makes them slightly easier reptiles to take care of. They are also diurnal, which means that they are active during the day, so that makes them a more interesting pet to have, in my opinion. So if you're looking at having a medium-sized pet lizard and maybe don't want to go with the typical bearded dragon, a blue tongue skink can be a really awesome option. Depending on the species that you go with, they are generally between 15 to 24 inches in length. They are sausage shaped and have stubby little legs, so they're pretty hilarious to look at. And the coolest part is their blue tongue. As the name gives, they have these amazing, beautiful blue tongues. One important thing to really consider about blue tongue skinks is that they have a rather long lifespan. In captivity, they can live anywhere from 15 to 30 years. Though I don't like to recommend any reptile as a beginner reptile, I do feel that a blue tongue skink is a great choice for somebody who maybe doesn't have a lot of experience with reptiles. For the most part, they are very docile and relatively easy to take care of as long as you're doing all the necessary research. And like I mentioned before, they are a unique alternative to a bearded dragon. Now, Ozzy is a little bit of an exception because she was a rescue and came from a very abusive home. So her temperament is not quite as docile as you see in many other blue tongue skinks, reasonably so. When I first got her, she was extremely defensive, would bite me, hiss at me, just wanted nothing to do with me. But with patience and perseverance, she came around. I can handle her now. However, for the most part, she doesn't really want to be held, and it's better for me to let her just kind of hang out and safely explore around the room. But I love her so dearly, and she is just so entertaining and just the sweetest, goofiest lizard. Okay, so to start off, we are going to talk about enclosure. Behind me here is Ozzy's 4x2x2 enclosure, which is the minimum size for a blue tongue skink. However, I feel that the requirement should actually be larger than that, closer to 6 feet. I plan to join two 4x2x2 dubia enclosures and upgrade her into what would be an 8-foot enclosure. She is really active and she is probably close to 16 inches or more, so I just feel that she needs a little bit more space than the minimum. However, she does get a lot of out of enclosure time and she does spend time outside with me during warm months. So she's not confined to her tiny enclosure all the time. But if you are considering a blue-tongued skink, bigger is always better. Now within that enclosure, you will need about 4 to 6 inches of substrate. They do tend to dig and burrow in the dirt a little bit, so they do need that thick substrate. And also when it comes to maintaining that humidity, you want something that's going to be able to hold moisture in as well. Some of the recommended substrates for these guys would be a Repti chip or the BioDudes Terra Firma, or you can do something like I did. I do my own DIY substrates, and mine is just a mix of organic topsoil, forest floor, there's a little bit of moss, and coconut fiber. I live in Colorado. It is really dry here, so I definitely have to add things into my substrate that really holds that moisture. So as far as what to add into your enclosure, you are going to need multiple hides. I like to use things like terracotta pots and kind of burrow them into the substrate. Ozzy loves that hide. And then also on her warm side, I've built a hide using slate and bricks that I just found at my local hardware store. The slate is great to hold that heat in and allow for a good basking surface. And then of course things like plants, you can do live or fake plants, leaf litter, branches. However, keep in mind that blue-tongued skinks are rather terrestrial animals, so you won't find them climbing a whole lot. And even though Ozzy will climb her branch in her enclosure a little bit, they are not very graceful climbers, so make sure it's not too high to keep them safe. And of course, make sure that there is a large water dish. I feel that one large enough for them to get into if they want is ideal. However, make sure the water is shallow enough that they don't drown either. Ozzy loves to dig under her water bowl and knock it over, or poop in her water bowl as well. So you will be likely changing that water bowl, if not every day, multiple times a day, like I find myself doing. All right, now that we've got the enclosure out of the way, we need to talk about lighting and heating. Now, this is going to vary slightly depending on the species that you go with. So once again, just make sure you are really researching your specific species. For the warm side or the basking spot, you're going to be looking at a temperature of about 100 to 115 degrees, depending on that species. For a cool side, your Australian species are going to need temps of about 70 to 85 degrees, and Indonesian species will need 75 to 85. It is healthy to provide a nighttime drop and eliminate all lighting at night. Australian species can drop down to 65 degrees. Indonesian species can drop down to 70. Now, if you do need to provide an overnight heat source, something like a deep heat projector would be ideal, as that is not going to eliminate any light whatsoever, but keep your animal warm if necessary. Though there are many people that may say that a blue-tongued skink doesn't require UVB, I definitely disagree with this, and I would definitely recommend providing a linear UVB lamp for your blue-tongued skink. The top brands that I recommend are going to be either Repti Sun or Arcadia. Make sure you are doing your research as far as what bulb is the best for your species, and depending on whether you are putting it above the mesh, under the mesh, and the distance from the basking surface as well. Personally, right now I am using ReptiSun's 10.0. I've also used Arcadia's Desert as well. Since these guys are diurnal species, they really need that simulation of sunlight to keep them healthy. So adding something like an LED bar is a great thing to really brighten up their enclosures during the daytime. They need 12 hours of light and then 12 hours of darkness. Another great thing about the LED bar as well is if you are adding live plants, that is going to help them be healthy and grow. So now we need to discuss humidity. I feel like this is probably the biggest difference for your specific species. So for Australian species, they need about 40 to 60% humidity, where the Indonesians need about 60 to 80%. And then there's even different species like the Halmahera that needs 70 to 100% humidity. So it's very important and essential that you are researching that and maintaining that proper humidity for your animal in order to keep them healthy. To maintain the humidity in your enclosure, you will need to use a spray bottle and mist the entire inside of their enclosure, and also adding water to the substrate is a great way to maintain that humidity. All right, moving on to diet. So, as far as how often to feed your blue-tongued skink, babies who are 3 months or younger need to eat every single day. Juveniles from 3 to 8 months will need to eat about 3 times per week, where an adult blue-tongued skink really only needs to eat once or twice per week. Young skinks are going to be needing more protein as they are growing, so they need about 70 to 80% of their diet to be made up of protein, where an adult will only need about 50 to 60% protein. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, blue-tongued skinks' diet varies greatly, which I think makes it super fun. As they are scavengers in the wild, they can eat all sorts of different things. Starting off with insects, this can be a great thing to feed your blue-tongued skink and is awesome enrichment as well. Letting them chase around things like a dubia roach or superworms or crickets is very good for their mental stimulation and a good source of protein in their diet as well. You can even eat meat, so things like ground turkey, ground chicken, ground beef, rabbit, duck, even organ meats are fantastic for your blue-tongued skink. They also commonly really like eggs, so you can do chicken or quail eggs. Many of them also like canned snails or frozen thawed pinky rats or fuzzy mice as a treat once in a while. Vegetables are also a very important part of their diet. For young skinks, they need about 20 to 30% of their diet to be made up of fresh vegetables, where an adult needs about 50 to 60%. They can eat things such as bell peppers, squash, carrots, leafy greens. They can eat dandelion greens and even the dandelion flowers. And then they can also have a little bit of fruit as well. About 10% or less of their diet can be fruit. It should be seen as more of a treat. As far as what fruits they can have berries, peaches, bananas, pears. Ozzy absolutely goes crazy for bananas. Another common food source for blue-tongued skinks, it's going to sound a little bit weird, but it's actually high quality dog food, and for skinks under a year, cat food, just because it has more protein. Just make sure you are doing a wet food and not kibble, and it's high quality. One thing I really like to do is make little cubes. So I take a high quality dog food and blend it up with veggies and a tiny bit of fruit. And then I freeze them in an ice cube tray, pop one out when I need to feed Ozzy, let it defrost at room temperature. And that's an easy, great, healthy go-to meal for her. Just keep in mind, if you are going to feed a dog food, that you are adding fresh vegetables to it as well, and you aren't adding a multivitamin because a lot of dog foods are obviously already fortified, so you don't want to add more vitamins on top of that, which could lead to your animal becoming sick. So there are other reptile specific pre-made diets that you can go with as well. Reptilinks are a great option, as well as Repashy, that makes a powdered food that you just add water to, that you can feed your blue-tongue skink as well. Just like other reptiles, they do need supplementation as well, so calcium is very important. And then if you aren't doing dog food, the occasional multivitamin is important as well. Bee pollen is also a really great superfood supplement that I love to sprinkle on top of Ozzy's food as well, and she absolutely loves bee pollen. So when you are bringing your new blue-tongue skink home, do keep in mind that you should always give them an adjustment period, just like any other reptile. So letting them get adjusted to their enclosure and their new home and letting them settle in for about a week or two before you handle is the best route. All right, guys, so this is just a basic care guide about blue-tongue skinks, and that is all that I have for you today. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments. If you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. And until the next video, happy reptile keeping, and I'll see y'all soon.